Not all stories are meant for the light. Some are hidden in the shadows of eternity, buried beneath dust, silence, and fear. Have you ever heard of angels? Not the gentle messengers of peace, but radiant warriors of heaven, who turned away from the throne of God, who chose desire over duty, and rebellion over eternal glory. Among the endless tapestry of ancient accounts, there is one tale that stands apart, not for its beauty, but for its weight. A story whispered only in fragments, concealed within forbidden scrolls and ancient prophecies. It is the account of the Watchers, those who descended, and in doing so, sealed their fate. This is no legend spun by mortal minds. This is a wound carved into the fabric of creation, a moment so fierce that it shook the pillars of heaven, split the veil of the spiritual realm, and left its mark upon the very heart of the earth. And among all the chronicles of angelic battles and divine decrees, none bear the same chilling, eternal gravity as this. According to the oldest of sacred writings, especially the mysterious Book of Enoch, there came a time when 200 angels, beings born from the first light of creation and entrusted with the sacred duty of guarding humankind, made a choice unlike any ever seen in heaven. No command was given. No decree thundered from the throne. This was no mission from above, but an act born in the depths of their own will. A choice, deliberate, unified, and irreversible. A choice to abandon their divine stations and cross a boundary no celestial being was ever meant to cross. And their reason: not war, not vengeance, but love, or at least, what they believed was love. To love as men love. To take for themselves the daughters of the earth, and taste the mortal passion forbidden to them since the dawn of time. These angels, later remembered and feared, as the Watchers, descended from the glory of heaven to walk among mankind. At first glance, their union with human women might appear romantic, even noble, a bridge between heaven and earth. But in truth, it was an act of defiance. A direct assault on the sacred order of the cosmos, a rebellion against the Creator's perfect design. And from that one forbidden choice, a chain of events was set in motion, events that would scar the earth, corrupt its people, and forever alter the destiny of both humanity and the angels themselves. But why? Why would beings of pure light, endowed with knowledge beyond mortal comprehension, power that could shape worlds, and a clarity of spirit unclouded by sin, choose such a path of ruin? What could compel them to exchange the unending glory of eternity for the fleeting, fragile pleasures of the earth? The answer lies within one of the most mysterious and dangerous gifts ever given by the Creator: free will. Even the angels, formed for precise and holy purposes, were not bound like automatons. They could choose. And in that ancient age, choice became their undoing. Blinded by an all-consuming passion, enticed by the seductive promise of dominion and delight, the Watchers surrendered. Their radiant wings dimmed into shadow. The brilliance of heaven's light that once clothed them was stained with the darkness of rebellion. In choosing to descend, they chose to fall. Yet, within this vast tragedy lies a single, startling mystery. A thread of light woven into a tapestry of darkness. For among the countless names forever branded as traitors of heaven, one stands apart. One whose story burns differently in the annals of eternity. According to fragments of long-forgotten scrolls and whispers passed through hidden traditions, there was one who was forgiven. One fallen angel who, against all expectation, found redemption. And it is this singular exception that transforms the tale from a simple account of rebellion into a far more complex and far more human story. This is not merely a story of rebellion and ruin, but also of the faint, flickering possibility of reconciliation. A fragile glimmer of hope where all light seemed extinguished. And it is this single thread of radiance, this spark of mercy in the endless abyss of defiance, that will guide our journey. His name is Sariel. For scholars of ancient texts, that name carries a weight beyond measure. Sariel was no common messenger, no distant observer. He was a high-ranking angel of immense authority, one who not only carried out heaven's commands but was entrusted with access to the deepest and most sacred mysteries of the divine order. Yet when the Watchers rose in defiance, Sariel was not absent. He stood among them at the critical hour, the moment when Samiaza, the most eloquent and persuasive of their number, led the pact of rebellion. On the wind-swept heights of Mount Hermon, beneath a sky heavy with silent judgment, 200 radiant beings gathered in the shadows. There, in that breathless stillness, they bound themselves together in an unbreakable oath, swearing loyalty to one another, and vowing to forsake the glory of heaven for the love of mortal women. Their words were not born of momentary impulse. They knew the cost. They spoke their vow with full knowledge of the eternal consequences. This was no reckless passion. It was a calculated revolt against the supreme order of the cosmos. And Sariel was there. He descended with them. He stood in the circle of the oath-takers. He heard the vow. He felt the weight of it settle over the assembly like a storm cloud. And though his voice joined theirs, something in his presence was different. A subtle, almost imperceptible nuance that set him apart from the others. Yes, he would fall. Yes, he would walk the path into exile. But the shadow in his heart was not the same as theirs. But what happened after Sariel's descent to earth is what forever sets him apart. Unlike his brethren, whose hearts quickly drowned in excess, corruption, and unrestrained indulgence, Sariel seemed to walk a different road. His steps, though fallen, still carried faint traces of the purity he once knew. In the eyes of the Most High, there remained a flicker, small, but unextinguished, of what he had been. The world, however, became a theater of chaos. The Watchers, once majestic guardians, sank ever deeper into the mire of their own desires. Passions unknown to them in heaven now consumed them entirely. And from this hunger, they began to bestow upon humanity forbidden treasures. Knowledge heaven had sealed away since the dawn of creation for reasons far beyond mortal comprehension. What was sacred became profane. What was meant to remain hidden was dragged into the open. They taught mankind ancient magic, words of power and incantations capable of bending the laws of reality itself. They revealed alchemical formulas to manipulate the very elements, metallurgy that forged weapons for war, and secret truths of the cosmos never meant for human hands. And their corruption reached beyond knowledge. For the Watchers took the women of the earth as their own, not in the innocence of love, but in the fever of desire. From these forbidden unions were born the Nephilim, giants of staggering stature and unmatched strength, but whose souls were drenched in corruption. They were creatures of the in-between, belonging neither to heaven nor to earth. Hybrids born of rebellion, devourers of creation itself. They roamed the world with an unquenchable thirst for blood and eyes that burned with the fire of destruction, leaving only ruin in their wake. The earth, once a garden tenderly shaped by the Creator's own hands, was now withering into a wasteland of desolation. The balance that bound heaven and earth together had been shattered. And yet, within this swelling darkness, a solitary figure began to stand apart. Sariel. Unlike his brethren, he did not plunge headlong into the intoxication of flesh and the lust for dominion. Yes, he had descended. Yes, his feet had touched the same profane soil. But he did not arrive as an eager accomplice. He came as a witness, and soon, with dawning horror, he understood that what was unfolding before him was not a glorious liberation, but a catastrophe. Sariel stepped back, not in cowardice, not in fear, but in discernment. His gaze, which had once lingered upon the beauty of the earthly horizon, began to lift again, searching the skies as though seeking answers, seeking redemption, perhaps seeking one last, fragile chance to mend what already seemed beyond mending. To the other Watchers, his hesitation was weakness, unforgivable weakness. But to Sariel, it was wisdom. He saw past the glitter of immediate pleasure, past the illusion of rulership over mankind. He understood the terrible, eternal weight of their choices, that every moment of indulgence would echo forever in the courts of heaven. And so he acted, not with a sword, not with the violence his brothers so eagerly embraced, but with words, words of counsel, of warning, of desperate appeal. Ancient fragments from forgotten scrolls, the whispers of lost oral traditions, and rare codices all speak of an angel among the fallen who tried to stand against the tide of corruption. An angel who, with a clarity that pierced the chaos, urged his brothers to turn back. Who, in mercy, pleaded with them to remember who they truly were. Not tyrants, not corrupters, but servants of light, guardians of balance, children of the Most High. That angel was Sariel, and in the midst of an army of darkness, he walked like a solitary flame in the wind, fragile, flickering, yet determined to burn against the night. But Sariel's words fell into the void, unheard, unheeded, unwanted. With each passing day, the earth grew less like the masterpiece the Creator had shaped, and more like a grotesque shadow of itself. The Nephilim, the cursed offspring of the forbidden unions, now strode across the world as living calamities. With their unnatural strength and sharp, predatory intellect, they conquered tribe after tribe. Some proclaimed themselves gods, demanding the worship and sacrifices of those they subjugated, raising colossal monuments in their own honor to blot out the memory of the true Creator. Others, consumed by an insatiable hunger, devoured all in their path, animals, crops, and men alike. Creation groaned under their weight. The harmony of life was deformed, twisted into something monstrous. It was a generation that was never meant to exist, and its very presence poisoned the earth. Sariel watched it all, powerless to reverse the tide, yet steadfast in refusing to be swept away by it. He built no temples to his own name. He taught no forbidden arts. He took no wife among the daughters of men and fathered no children. His was the lonely choice of silent vigilance, to remain present, to lament, and, when the moment allowed, to try to restore even the smallest fragment of balance to a world collapsing under its own corruption. And in his anguish, he saw it clearly, the growing chasm between what the Watchers had once been and what they had become. They had been protectors, guardians, servants of light. But now they walked the earth as false gods among mortals, intoxicated by their own power, forgetting their sacred mission to defend, not dominate, to serve, not to glorify themselves. It was into this atmosphere, heavy with pride, drenched in blood, saturated with sin, that the judgment of God was set into motion. And when it came, it would not be slow nor merciful. And when the Most High judges, he judges with perfect justice and an unerring hand. From the throne above all thrones came forth decrees that could never be revoked. The rebellion would be answered. The Watchers would be punished. And the earth, the wounded masterpiece of creation, would be purified. From the heights of heaven, the hosts began to move. First came Michael, commander of the heavenly armies, clothed in blinding glory, his flaming sword drawn, a blaze of holy fire in the gathering storm. Then descended Raphael, the great healer, yet now carrying the mantle of divine correction, ready to mend the broken world by first excising its infection. Following him was Gabriel, the herald of the Almighty's will, his voice a trumpet of judgment that shook both heaven and earth. And last came Uriel, the radiant bearer of the light of judgment, whose very presence pierced the shadows where evil hid. The four great archangels advanced like sacred tempests, their arrival a thunderous wave of holiness crashing upon the corrupted earth. With them they carried the chains of eternal justice, not forged of earthly metal, but woven of divine authority itself, unbreakable and everlasting. One by one, the Watchers were found. Their towering pride crumbled beneath the gaze of heaven's might. Their spiritual forms, once dazzling with celestial brilliance, were bound in those chains. Their voices, which had once commanded the attention of heaven, were silenced, swallowed by the darkness into which they were cast. And into that darkness they were hurled, deep spiritual prisons, sealed with enchantments no rebellion could break, there to await the day of the final judgment. Samiaza, who had sworn the oath upon Mount Hermon and led the others into defiance, was the first to fall. His chains burned with the fire of justice, and his cry echoed into the void. One by one, his followers were seized, dragged down beneath the weight of divine wrath. But Sariel was not imprisoned. Not because heaven had forgotten him. Not because he had somehow escaped the watchful eyes of the archangels. He was seen. He was judged. And yet, he was spared. For the one who sees all, the maker of the heavens and the earth, had watched Sariel from the very first moment of his descent. Every choice, every hesitation, every act of restraint, every whisper of warning, nothing was hidden from his sight. His descent, his restraint, his refusal to indulge, his solitary, unwavering effort to slow the oncoming catastrophe, all of it was seen. The Almighty, in his perfect omniscience, looked upon Sariel and saw not merely a reluctant transgressor swept along by the tide, but a faithful servant who, even while surrounded by rebellion, had chosen the narrow path of righteousness. This did not erase his guilt entirely, for he had descended, and that act could not be undone. But it set him apart. While his brothers were cast into the abyss without plea or appeal, Sariel's fate took another course. He was summoned before the throne itself, his case to be heard, his actions weighed with the scales of perfect justice. And there, in the court of heaven, the unthinkable unfolded. According to ancient traditions, faint whispers preserved in the echoes of time, and in the brittle pages of apocryphal fragments, Sariel was brought into the presence of the Most High, not as one already condemned, but as one whose judgment demanded more than mere evidence or testimony. Before the throne, radiant beyond comprehension, where no falsehood survives and every hidden truth stands naked before the light, Sariel stood in absolute silence. There was no defense to offer, no plea to craft. There was no need. His actions had already spoken for him. His refusal to cross the most sacred boundaries, his steadfast resistance to the lure that consumed his brethren, was itself a living testimony. And in that silence, something as rare as it was magnificent occurred. A gesture so uncommon in the history of the angelic host that it stands alone in eternity. Grace was given. The Almighty, whose gaze pierces the deepest depths of every soul, extended mercy. And the name of Sariel was written not among the eternally condemned, but among the redeemed. Forgiven, not because he was flawless, but because, when surrounded by corruption, he chose to remember the light. But what Sariel received that day was not merely a suspension of condemnation, it was something infinitely greater. It was not simply a stay of judgment. It was restoration. Complete. Absolute. The one who had set foot upon the earth, yet had refused to let the earth's corruption take root in him, was lifted back to the place from which he had fallen. His radiance was returned, brighter than before. The stains upon his essence were washed away, leaving him pure, whole, and unbroken. The fire of heaven once again clothed him, and the music of eternity once more welcomed him into its harmony. From that moment, Sariel was no longer a silent witness among the fallen. He became something far greater, an everlasting symbol of redemption, obedience, and hope. This divine act, extraordinary in its mercy, marked him forever. For among 200 angels who stood upon the heights of Mount Hermon and chose rebellion, he alone chose righteousness. He alone, though standing in the same place, breathing the same air, facing the same temptation, surrounded by the same opportunity for transgression, did not bow. He felt the same passions that consumed his brothers, but he did not surrender. On that mountain where the rebel oath was sworn, he stood apart. And he remained apart, choosing the lonely, costly path of integrity over the intoxicating mirage of false glory. Thus Sariel became more than a name in the annals of heaven. He became an eternal reminder to all creation that the fall is not inevitable, that even those who walk to the edge of the abyss can still turn back toward the light. His life proclaims the enduring truth that, even in an age when corruption reigns and rebellion spreads like wildfire, the choice to remain faithful, to stand when all others bow, is not only possible, but powerful enough to change eternity. Righteousness can exist even in the darkest of realms, and fidelity, though it may be silent, resounds in the courts of heaven far louder than the fiercest cry of rebellion. Yet the forgiveness Sariel received was not the closing chapter of his story. No, it was the opening of a new one more sacred, more demanding, and more profound than anything he had known before. He was not simply spared eternal condemnation. He was entrusted with a new purpose, one forged in the crucible of trial and refined through the fire of temptation resisted. His spirit, already pure, now carried the weight of deep empathy, the depth of wisdom, and the clarity of understanding that only comes from standing on the edge of ruin and choosing to turn back. Restored to his glorious, radiant form, Sariel was elevated, not merely reinstated, but exalted, to one of the highest stations among the heavenly hosts. Ancient sources, including the enigmatic Book of Enoch, record his name among the 7 holy angels, the spiritual elite who stand directly before the throne of the Most High. These 7 are not mere executors of divine commands. They are the very pillars of the celestial will, mediators between the boundless and the finite, between the eternal and the fleeting, between the God who reigns above all and the creation that breathes below. To stand among them was not simply an honor, it was an eternal seal of trust. For Sariel, it became both a crown and a calling, a commission that would forever mark him as a living emblem of mercy, sanctity, and redemption. And the mission entrusted to Sariel was as perfectly suited to his journey as the final stroke to a master's painting. In his unfathomable wisdom, God appointed him to a task no other could fulfill, to guide the spirits of the righteous, and more specifically, those who, though they had strayed, still carried within their hearts a fragile ember of repentance. Sariel became a sentinel of hope, the guardian of those who still had the capacity to turn back, the counselor to souls who, like him, once walked dangerously close to the edge of the abyss, yet longed with all their being for a way home. No other angel in all the hosts of heaven was more fitted for this sacred duty. Sariel understood, not from the safe distance of theory, but from the searing reality of lived experience, the crushing weight of temptation, the suffocating silence that can descend in moments of doubt, and the life-altering significance of a single choice made at the right moment. He knew what it meant to have a heart torn between the light and the shadow, and to summon the strength to choose the light. That is why his presence among the wavering is more than symbolic, it is transformative. Sariel does not condemn, he understands. He does not accuse, he guides. He does not punish, he redeems. And in this quiet, compassionate ministry, he wields a power infinitely greater than the corrupt dominion the Watchers had once so desperately craved, the power to restore. To lift what was fallen. To rekindle what was fading. To lead wandering hearts back into the arms of the one who never stopped watching over them. Thus, Sariel became a living instrument of divine grace, a sacred reminder that the Most High delights not only in those who have never erred, but also, and perhaps even more, in those who, though given every opportunity to fall, choose instead to remain faithful. His very existence bears witness to a truth as old as creation, that steadfastness in the face of temptation shines brighter than untested innocence. This new commission brought him into direct contact with human souls. Not the souls already swallowed by corruption, nor those who have sealed themselves in rebellion, but those still locked in an internal war, fighting their own weaknesses and failures. These are the souls marked by error, scarred by stumbles and missteps, yet still unwilling to surrender the fight for righteousness. To them, Sariel comes as a silent guide, not in blinding visions or thunderous voices, but as an almost imperceptible, yet immeasurably powerful presence. He protects the uncertain. He warns the wavering. He gently nudges the willing heart toward the narrow path, toward the better choice. The very choice he himself once stood upon and made. The patriarch Enoch, who, according to the sacred record, was taken into heaven without tasting death, writes in his heavenly visions that Sariel holds a position of immense responsibility in the unseen realms. He is the one who watches over the destinies of souls, the one who maintains the fragile balance between divine justice and infinite mercy. Moment by moment, he bears witness to the secret battles waged in the depths of countless human hearts, battles no one else sees, but which heaven weighs with the utmost care. And in those battles, Sariel stands as both guardian and witness, ever ready to guide the soul that chooses light over darkness. Sariel's role is not to judge with severity, but to watch with unshakable compassion. Not to condemn without hope, but to guide with patient, timeless wisdom. And in that role is revealed the very character that God himself saw and valued in him, the deep well of empathy, and the steadfast strength of righteousness that would not yield even under the weight of the greatest temptation. His journey has become a living model of active redemption. Unlike his fellow Watchers who fell into ruin and were bound forever in the abyss, Sariel lives eternally as a shining testament that obedience, even when surrounded by doubt, pressure, and seduction, holds immeasurable worth in the eyes of the Most High. Yet his life is more than a testimony. It is a bridge. A luminous, enduring bridge between those who feel irreversibly lost, and the real, tangible possibility of returning to the path of light. There is no arrogance in his calling. No triumphal display of his restoration as a prize. Instead, there is humble, tireless service, a daily outpouring of himself for the sake of others. To those wandering near the edge of the abyss, Sariel offers not the cold distance of a judge, but the nearness of a guide who truly understands. For Sariel carries within him a memory that never fades, the vivid, searing memory of all he once witnessed. He saw rebellion in its infancy. He stood among the oath-takers. He knew the faces of his companions before darkness claimed them. And he remembers, not to boast of his survival, but to fuel his mission, to keep others from walking that same path into ruin. He saw with his own eyes the unspeakable terror the Nephilim brought upon the earth, their devastation, their bloodlust, the way they turned creation itself into a hunting ground. And he felt the cold, suffocating silence that descended over heaven when its gates closed to the disobedient. That memory, etched deep into his very being, makes him profoundly attuned to the complex and fragile decisions of humankind. Sariel knows from lived experience how the smallest choices can alter the entire course of a life, even the fate of a soul. He understands the ease with which one can slip, and the immense, grueling strength it takes to remain steadfast when adversity presses in from every side. Some ancient accounts even suggest that Sariel plays a role in the judgment of souls, particularly in that most delicate of tasks, separating those who still carry a spark of redemption from those who have fully and deliberately chosen the darkness. This does not make him a merciless judge. Rather, it makes him a vigilant and compassionate observer, one whose own story has become a living measure of both grace and discernment. After all, who better to walk alongside the fallen than one who himself once stood at the very edge of the abyss and chose to turn back? According to certain traditions, Sariel's mission has never ceased. To this day, he moves unseen, not as a blazing, overpowering figure, but as a quiet, enduring presence woven into the fabric of the world. His influence is subtle, almost imperceptible, a whisper carried on the wind, a sudden clarity in the mind, an intuition in the heart. And yet, for those who are searching, for those standing at a crossroads desperate for direction and meaning, that whisper can become a lifeline. For it is in these quiet moments, when the soul listens, that Sariel's presence is felt, guiding, protecting, and leading hearts back toward the light that never dies. Many who feel a sudden pull toward change. Who, in a moment of stillness, become painfully aware of their own failings. Who, in the depths of despair, discover an unexpected surge of strength. Maybe, without even knowing it, under the gentle and compassionate watch of Sariel. The story of Sariel calls us to deep reflection. It reminds us that a fall, no matter how great, does not have to be the end. That even those who have walked dangerously close to the gravest of errors can still turn back, can still choose the path of restoration and redemption. Sariel made that choice. And now, for all eternity, his mission is to help others do the same. He is the angel who fell, but was not corrupted. The only one among 200 who chose obedience over pride. And for that, he became not merely the restored, but the restorer. If this story has stirred something within you as deeply as it has within me, remember, Sariel's tale is but one hidden gem among countless others, concealed between the lines of ancient and forgotten texts. If the mercy shown to one angel can speak so powerfully across the ages, imagine what other mysteries still await discovery. Mysteries that bridge the realms of heaven and earth. So, if you hunger for more of these little-known, yet deeply meaningful accounts, if you want to journey deeper into the truths the world has almost forgotten, then subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell, so you will not miss a single story that unveils the most guarded secrets between heaven and earth. May the peace and blessing of God be with you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. From this moment on, each of our videos will be accompanied by a special resource designed to help you go deeper in your spiritual journey. With every new episode, we prayerfully prepare and lovingly select 10 powerful biblical inspirations. Timeless words meant to bring comfort, hope, and peace to your heart. This is more than just an ebook. It's a motivational and uplifting companion, created with care for you, our faithful viewer and friend, who walks with us in every story we share. And by purchasing this guide for a symbolic price, you're not only blessing your own life, you're also directly helping us continue creating the high-quality, meaningful content that our community truly deserves. A tense scene, Sariel speaking to a group of watchers, his expression pleading, their faces hardened in pride, night sky with storm clouds above, cinematic realism, 16:9.